check it. Check it. Oh, I think I got the fever. I'm heated, pumping up the meter. Label me a ringleader, mad party bleeder. Make this with a storm, lead after leader. Hey, can you dig it? I come alive, y'all, give me what you got. Back up, pump, stick up, pump your fist up. You took the shadow, don't buck shots, a bus slip up. Morning like a kid, gonna make it feel alright. Pump it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break the moves, slip up. Morning like a kid, gonna make it feel alright. Pump it up all night. Show me what you got, let Bob break the moves. Do you wanna get check it out, 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 check it, check it out, check it, check it out, check it. Check it. Check it. Oh, I think I got the fever. I'm heated, pumping up the meter. Label me a ringleader, mad party bleeder. Make this with a storm, lead after leader. Hey, can you dig it? I come alive, y'all, give me what you got. Back up, pump, stick up, pump your fist up. You took the shadow, don't buck shots, a bus slip up. Morning like a kid, gonna make it feel alright. Pump it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break the moves, slip up. Morning like a kid, gonna make it feel alright. Pump it up all night, body rock, show me what you got. Let Bob break the moves. Do you wanna get check it out, check it out, check it out, check it, 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 check it out. you softly leave. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love? Your love, how deep is your love? I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us speak. We belong to you and me. I believe in you. You know the door to my very soul. You're the light in my deepest, darkest hour. You're my savior when I fall. And you may not think that I care for you when you know down inside that I really do. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love? Your love, how deep is your love? I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. Then you come to me on a summer breeze, keep me warm in your love, then you softly leave. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love? Your love, how deep is your love? I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. They belong to you and me.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Okie dokie. Alright. Ooh, 1 second. Let me go ahead and blow my nose. Okay, that's better. Alright, happy Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. A couple things we gotta go over. And right now I'll start recording. Uh, yeah, alright. Okay. Wait, no, stop recording. Let me show my display. There we go. Start recording. All right, guys. So, uh, one really important thing that we have to do straight away is correct my mistake, as it were. Unfortunately, the quiz, although it is nice and I can see all the results and all the answers that you guys did, I do not know who did what. Um, if I can show you guys, maybe. Let me see. So I go down here and I take a look at your responses and I look at the individual ones, but it doesn't tell me who did which quiz. And there were a few 100% quizzes, which I really want to, hand out. I want to give you guys the grades you got, but I don't know who did what, and that's my fault. So, one thing I'd like us to do today is you're going to have to go back into your quiz and remember it's under the classwork section, chapter 13 quiz, and you're going to have to type in your email address, specifically the email address that you use to join this classroom. As that way I'll be able to see, well, your quiz will essentially be identified with you. Right now I can't tell who did what, and that's a big problem. I don't want to just give out random grades. So go back into the Chapter 13 quiz. It'll let you update it so you can keep all your answers there, and just type in your email address. Make sure it's the one for the Google Classroom, and that way I can assign your grades. A lot of people did really well in this quiz. I was really happy well, I was really happy to look over the responses and see that you guys did really well. Um, and that will pretty much wrap it up for chapter 13. So again, make sure you get in here and insert your email or type in your email address. Remember the one that you used for this Google Classroom, and that way you'll get your grade. Okay. Uh, let's uh, let's go ahead and talk about some new stuff. So we are going to be going into chapter 20, and in chapter 20 we will be discussing uh, ecology, which is sort of the study of animals' interactions with each other and the environment. So we haven't really talked about that. We talked about specific types of organisms, but now we're going to put them together and evaluate their interactions with each other across a multitude of different settings. So let me go ahead. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm adding the scan pages for, oh, not the link. I'm adding the scan pages for this chapter. So let me go ahead and pull those up. Let me go to where I have them. Biology and chapter 21, ecology. Oh, sorry, it's chapter 21, not 20. My bad. So let's upload this. It's gonna take a while. But while we have the time, go ahead and type something in the chat so that I know you're here. I can see that there are people in the stream. Don't know who is who. So type something in the chat. Let me know that you're alive and listening and are receiving this. When I say chat, I mean the YouTube stream chat. You can always post a comment on the Google Classroom page. I hope everyone had a good weekend. I myself had a great weekend. Okay, so let me change this. It's chapter 21. I'll put scanned textbook pages. And this is for chapter 21. Alright, let's post it right now. Okie dokie. So, for everything related to chapter 21, this is the entire chapter that I scanned up here. So if you have, if you do not have your textbook at home, you can go on to the Google Classrooms classwork tab and download the PDF of all the pages. Oop, okay. Won't let me preview, but that's okay. I can always open it in a new tab. And yeah, so all of the pages are here. I would try to download it first before viewing it. Apparently the browsers. Oh, there it is. Okay, never mind. Yeah, but it's probably easier to download it too. All right, so just to recap, if you guys are just joining us now, I'm recording this, so please go back and listen to the early announcements, but I'll just restate it here, just in case. Everyone needs to go into their Chapter 13 quiz and type their email address, okay? I don't know who did which quiz, but you guys can go in and edit your responses and just insert your email address. Your answer should still be there, so you won't have to redo it, but you need to go in and type your email address. And this will be the same for every single quiz that we do through this Google Forms. You'll have to type your email address so I know that you did it, okay? And again, the Chapter 21 scanned textbook pages are now uploaded, so when we do assignments out of the textbook for Chapter 21, that's where we'll find them. Alrighty, that's it for just the housekeeping stuff, and oh, I got another sneeze coming. Give me a second, guys. Oh my goodness, I am just a sneeze machine right now. Ooh. Alright, so what were we talking about? We're going to be going over to, where is it? Okay, MobyMax. And we're not doing an assignment on MobyMax. I just like MobyMax because it's really good for the visuals and the information, and I think it'll be a great introduction to Chapter 21 if we get started here. Alright, so again, We are in chapter 21, ecology, and I'm going to be showing you guys the Moe Max lesson for ecology right now, the introduction. Alrighty. Ooh, before I do that, make sure my chat is open. Hey, Crystal, how you doing? Organisms and the environment. So, if you are an organism, you live in an environment, and depending on what organism you are, you can live in a single or multiple environments uh, all across the world. So, if a human being, our environment is obviously a city, an area with mm, maybe a well, let me backtrack. If you're a human, your environment is probably a city. If we're all sort of evaluating ourselves here, our environment is an urban city. If you are a if you are a squirrel of some sort, your environment might be a forest in a specific climate range. If you are a whale, your environment is going to be the ocean. Um, and then you could specify which ocean you are, which ocean that is, depending on which ocean you're in at that time. But yeah, organisms and the environment. The environment is pretty much the place where an organism lives. Let's move forward. Ooh. So, let's talk about habitats first, okay? And actually, I'm gonna go ahead and we'll listen to the audio here. They probably read it better than I do. So let's take a listen.
All environments consist of living and non-living things. Both of these components are important to the survival of an organism. An organism, which is an individual living thing, depends on its environment to supply it with everything it needs to survive. Although different types of organisms live in different types of environments, they all need similar things in order to survive: food, water, space, and shelter.
Okay, so a couple important things were definitely just reviewed there. An organism depends completely on its environment to survive because the environment provides it with, again, food, water, space, and shelter. Uh, in this example they give you here, the trees, which are organisms, guys, trees are living things, let's remember this. The trees depend on the soil for nutrients and water and minerals, as well as space. I mean, if there's no soil and no space for the tree to grow its roots, it won't be able to get the nutrients and the water. The fox and the wolf in this picture too also depend on the soil because they can dig out dens for their cubs. So we could see that although the different organisms use the soil for different things, both the trees and the fox and the wolf depend on the soil for different reasons. Okay. Now let's talk about ecology. Ecology, probably one of the most underrated subfields of biology, but nonetheless, we're going to learn about it today.
Ecology is the study of how organisms interact with each other and with their environment. Organisms are constantly interacting with one another in their environment. These interactions can be direct or indirect. A predator killing another organism is an example of a direct interaction, while a fox's use of an abandoned den is an example of an indirect interaction. Changes in non-living parts of an environment, such as temperature and weather, also affect organisms. Scientists who study the various aspects of organism-environment interactions are called ecologists. Ecologists seek to explain such things as life processes and how organisms adapt to change.
Okay, so again, ecology is the study of how organisms interact with each other and with their environment. So they interact with other living things, but they also interact with non-living things too. The example they gave us above is an example of organisms interacting with non-living things, in this case the soil. Um, Water and nutrients are also non-living things. So anytime an organism is trying to access those, it is interacting with a non-living thing. Okay, let's move on. So, the natural environment that supports the life and growth of an organism is its habitat. And in an environment, there are different types of habitats. So, for example, in a forest, you might have trees and brushes, there might be soil, there might be a river that runs by. I mean, the environment is that forest, but there's different habitats. Maybe the upper branches of a tree is the habitat for a squirrel. The ground, the loose ground that can be dug out and made into burrows and dens could be the habitat for a ground squirrel or a gopher. Um, so again, the important thing is that the environment has many different habitats for different organisms that live in it. Okay, so let's take a look at the different habitats of a couple of different organisms. Right here, the first one would be prairie dogs. So prairie dogs live in underground habitats called burrows, and they'll have these networks of tunnels that can actually get pretty large, the size of football fields sometimes. And those tunnels give them space to move around and give them shelter from enemies. So again, those tunnels are sort of the prairie dog interacting with a non-living thing in its environment. Okay. Um, Prairie dogs, they eat grasses, they eat plant roots, and they eat insects. So those would be direct interactions with those organisms. When the prairie dog is eating the grass, it is directly interacting with the grass. Um, they get all the water they need from the plants they eat, so they don't need to live near water. They get their water from everything that they eat, which is pretty useful. Um, let's move on to the next one. What is this? The surface, shore, or even the bottom of a freshwater pond can make perfect habitats for algae to live. So we're looking at.
The,
Oop,
sur- the,
oh,
sur-
oh,
the
I don't want to.
surface, shore, or even the bottom of a
I did
freshwater
not want to
pond
listen to
can make
that.
perfect habitats for algae to live. These different habitats overlap, which is true of many habitats within the same environment. Algae make their own food using the nutrients within the water and the sun's energy.
Okay, I did not mean to click on that button. But what was described here was that our algae can live on the surface of a freshwater pond. They can live on the shore, and they can even live at the bottom if the light can reach it. So all of those are perfect habitats for algae. So when they say overlap, it means that the algae have multiple environments they can live in. Um, I don't know if the same is true for all organisms. I'm not sure if there's any other habitat that a prairie dog can live in that will be as beneficial to it as the burrows that it creates. But some organisms do have some flexibility on their habitat. And again, for algae, it's the surface of the water, the shoreline, or even the bottom. Okay, let's move on. So, we are going to do a little activity. I need you guys to tell me which of these 8 terms to drag into the box. Okay? Now, inside the box, we need to make sure that we are putting the things that all organisms need from their environments to survive. Okay? So our options are shelter, water, clothes, space, soil, friendship, food, and heat. So in the chat, if you can, please type one of the things that I should drag into the box, and we'll move on from there. Okay, food. That's one of them. Great job, Crystal. Food is important. I need some food right now. Water is another one as well. Okay, good job. What else? What about clothes? Do do all organisms need clothes? Do they? I don't think so. What about friendship? Do all organisms need friendship to survive? I know we all rely on our friends, but no. What about heat? Heat. Is heat necessary for an environment? No, not really. I don't think so. I don't think heat is that important. Shelter. Shelter. Yes, I think shelter is definitely a requirement, a need that organisms have. And finally, Crystal, yes, space. I don't think any of these other ones apply. Heat may seem like a good idea, but I counter that assertion by introducing you to the Arctic Circle. Plenty of organisms can survive in really cold environments. So we're gonna leave heat off of this table for now, and let's see if we got everything correct. Yes. So let's go ahead and listen to the key point here.
Every organism depends on its environment to provide it with sources of food, water, space, and shelter so that it can live, grow, and reproduce.
Alrighty. Uh, it's important to realize that the organisms are using these resources, these different things, food, water, space, and shelter, solely for the purpose of living, growing, and reproducing. Okay? That's what they use those sources for. It enables them to live, grow, and reproduce. Okay, let's move on. Alrighty. So let's take a look at this example right here that they give us. I'll read this out because I actually like to read it instead. A beaver has cut down trees and used the wood to build a dam in the river. The dam backed up the river, flooding the area and making a pond. In this way, the beaver created protection for itself from enemies such as wolves and bears. In this environment, there is a lot of vegetation for the beavers to eat and plenty of water. Okay? Does this environment provide the beaver with all things it needs to survive? Explain your reasoning. So remember, think back to the last slide we looked at. Does that pond provide the beaver with food, shelter, space, and water? Okay, if you guys decided to say yes, this habitat, this pond that the beaver made gives it food, shelter, water, and what was the last thing? Space. Yes, you are correct. This is a perfect environment and habitat for the beaver, which is why they probably make these dams. It makes sense. All organisms are seeking those four things. And if they are able to create them for themselves, in this case, a beaver can create its own ideal habitat by constructing a dam, then it'll do so. And they're not the only organisms that manipulate the environment in order to create a more ideal habitat for themselves. But they're a great example of how some organisms can do that. All right. Oh, we don't have to type anything here. No worries. Okay, so here is another question that we're going to go over. Dr. Amari, just a fictional person, is an ecologist. Which of the following topics might he study for his next research project? So, again, thinking about what ecology is, the study of organisms and how they interact with each other and the environment, that is the what ecology that's what the field of ecology revolves around. Um, so, taking that in mind, which of these would be a good area to study for a research project? Good morning, Miss McGee. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. The reasons behind the decline of a frog population in a local wetland. This is actually a perfect topic to study. Whenever there are changes in population in any species, it's really the ecologists that really investigate and determine what is driving that change in population. They are essentially detectives for the natural world. The development of a new hybrid vehicle. Uh, I would say no. I would say no. The development of a new hybrid vehicle. If this particular ecologist is involved in planning and building and engineering, I would say that no, this is not a topic that he would study. However, he might study the effects of hybrid vehicle on the carbon emissions in an environment. He might do that. Okay. But he wouldn't be involved with developing the hybrid vehicle. The next one, the effects of a local forest fire on animals living in the forest. Again, he's looking at an interaction or a change due to a natural disaster. Um, and he's looking at the changes in the animals. So again, this is a perfect area for an ecologist to study. It has to do with the animals in the forest, how they would interact or respond to a local forest fire. Okay, the rate at which bacteria reproduce when given different nutrients. Hmm. I think this might be an interesting topic to study for an ecologist, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure because at the same time, he is not. He is looking at bacteria, which is a living thing, right? He's looking at an organism, but instead of looking at how it interacts with the environment or how it interacts with other organisms, he's trying to see if it reproduces more when given different nutrients. Um, I think this one's up in the air for now, but we'll check it anyways. We'll see if this is correct or incorrect. The diet of a newly discovered species. Mm, you know what? I'm gonna uncheck this because I'm not too sure about this one. Uh-oh, maybe not. Okay, we're gonna stick with this one. The diet of a newly discovered species. It's possible. It's possible that an ecologist would study these things because it's a brand new species, you're not sure what its behavior is. You're not sure how it interacts with other organisms. Looking at its diet might inform an ecologist on the different ways that it interacts with its environment. Okay. So, for instance, maybe if you discover a species and their diet is mostly fish, well, maybe you'd look at its traits and see if they provide it with advantages or strategies to effectively catch fish. So we'll check this one. And finally, the way that gray wolves hunt deer for food. Um, if you remember from a previous slide, predators hunting prey is a direct interaction between organisms. So that very, very, very nicely fits into the definition of ecology, which is the study of interactions between organisms and their environment. All right. So all five of these are pretty good topics to study for an ecologist. And you notice how they're all very different, right? Um, they're all incredibly different. They look at different organisms. They might look at different environments. So what I'm trying to share with you, and I think what this slide is trying to convey, is that ecology is a very broad field, and there's lots of different areas that you can study. If you are interested in biology and science in general, you have a lot of options as an ecologist. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we are going to fill in the blanks here. Okay, I am going to read out each sentence. Okay, each sentence I'm going to read out, and we're going to try to figure out what's going to fit into the blanks. All right, so a or an. A blank is studying dwarf owls in a desert blank. So in order, what are the two terms from the list above right here? What are the two terms that I should add into these blanks? Okay, if you guys were thinking ecologist for the first blank, you would be right. An ecologist, that makes sense. An ecologist, a person who studies ecology, is studying dwarf owls in a desert habitat. Good job, Judson. All right. He observes the owls blank with other organisms and with their environment. So what is he observing? What of the owls is he observing? We've already done, well, I can't scratch these off. We've already canceled out ecologist and habitat. So we have animal, shelter, survive, and interactions. He observes the owls shelter with other organisms. That doesn't quite fit. He observes the owls survive. I don't think that works grammatically. He observes the owl's interactions with other organisms and with their environment. Huh. That actually fits perfectly. So he observes the owl's interactions with other organisms and also the environment. He is especially interested in observing how the dwarf owl shares its shelter, shares its animal, shares its survive. I think in this case, it's probably better. The only word that works here would be shelter. Um, let's read the rest of the sentence and include the word shelter and see if it works. He is especially interested in observing how the dwarf owl shares its shelter, a saguaro cactus, with other kinds of organisms. Hmm. Now, let's think about this. Can multiple organisms share the same shelter? Uh, I would say yes. Yes, if you live in a tree, and it's a large tree, it's possible that you might live on the branches, or you might live in a hole near the trunk of the tree, or you might actually live in a cavity or a hole inside the tree itself. So, again, you can look at one shelter, and there might be different habitats for organisms to live on that one piece of shelter. Okay? And last but not least, by studying the owl's ecology, he can better understand how these organisms, I think that last one is survive. Ooh, I'm going to actually leave. Yeah. Actually, I think this is fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we're good here. Let's see. Yes, we got it. All right, let's move on. Ooh, we're checking for understanding here. So we just reviewed the first part of our introduction to ecology, and the main points that we are supposed to hopefully be familiar with or aware of now are these. Remember, the study of how living things interact with each other and with their environment is called ecology. Okay? And an organism depends on its habitat to provide it with food, water, space, and shelter so that it can live, grow, and reproduce. Let's move on. Okay, so we're going to talk about biotic and abiotic factor. Um, I'm going to read this out to you guys instead of using the auto chat. Uh, let's go ahead and jump into it. Different types of organisms live in different types of habitats depending on what they need to grow and survive. Many components make up an organism's habitats. So components would be parts. Many parts make up an organism's habitat. These components or parts are referred to as biotic and abiotic factors. A biotic factor is any living or once living thing in an environment. The word biotic begins with the prefix bio, which means life. Again, biology is the study of life. Okay, so anything that is biotic is a living or once living thing. Some examples of biotic factors include living things such as humans and animals and plants, and even things that were once alive, like a rotting log will be a good one. An animal carcass that was once alive but is now decomposing. Those are all biotic factors. Okay, remember, a biotic factor is anything that is living or was once living. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look at this nice rotting log here.
This rotting log was once a tall, living cypress tree. As a biotic factor in its environment, it serves as a place on which mosses and mushrooms can grow. Insects and worms can feed, and as a shelter for smaller organisms.
Okay, so important thing to take away from this is that despite not being alive anymore, this old cypress tree trunk uh, is providing shelter and food to other organisms. So uh, just because something is dead does not mean that it does not have its purpose or does not have its use in the environment. It still can be interacted with by any of the other organisms in that particular environment, and often to the other organisms' benefit. Okay, let's talk about abiotic factors. So if biotic factors deal with living or once living things in the environment, abiotic would mean the opposite. So anything that is non-living in an environment. So the word abiotic, it has the prefix a in front of that bio. Okay, so even though bio means life, a, when you have that little a in front of biotic, the a means without or not. So in this case, biotic factor would be a living factor, and then abiotic will be a not living factor. Okay? So, examples of abiotic factors, non-living things, things that were never alive. Those could be rocks, could be water, oxygen, sunlight, let's see, wind, temperature. These are all abiotic factors. And not every abiotic factor is visible. So you can see things like rocks, right? Those are very visible abiotic factors. You can see sunlight, you can see water, but you may not be able to see things like temperature. You may not be able to see things like wind, okay? And even if you get down to really small levels, things like minerals in the ground, you might not be able to see those directly, but they're there, okay? They're there. Let's move on. Ooh, let's zoom out here so we can see this. Just a little bit more. No. Okay. An organism interacts with both the biotic and abiotic factors in its habitat. Click on the buttons below to learn more about some of these types of interactions. So let's just go in order. Let's start with 1. Interactions between two biotic factors can involve the exchange of matter, the use of energy, or both. When a giraffe eats leaves, it uses energy, but also receives the leaves, which are a form of matter that contain energy. When two lions fight, both organisms use energy. Okay? Let's move on to number 2. The decomposing log is a biotic factor that provides nutrients to the soil as well as a home and food source to organisms such as insects. So we have a biotic factor here. And a lion itself is also a biotic factor. In this case, it's describing interactions between two biotic factors. So maybe two lions that are fighting. Those are two biotic factors interacting with each other. Let's move on to number 3. Most living things need oxygen to carry out life processes. Oxygen is an abiotic factor. So even though number 3 was next to an elephant, it's actually describing the oxygen that has to be in this environment in order for all the other biotic factors, the organisms, to breathe and carry out life processes. Okay? Uh, Oxygen is obtained through the air for land animals, and for aquatic animals, like maybe anything living in this pond, they'll probably get their oxygen dissolved in the water that they live in. And people wondering themselves, you may be wondering, Mr. Holden, how is there oxygen in water? That doesn't make sense. I can't breathe in water. Well, similar to the way that CO2 dissolves into soda, and when you open a soda, it fizzes and releases that gas. Oxygen similarly can dissolve in water as well. Okay, although it does not fizz the way carbon dioxide does. All right, let's go to number 4. The same factor can be used differently. Well, let me zoom in. This is probably tough to see. The same factor can be used differently by different organisms. So soil is a combination of biotic and abiotic factors that influences plant growth. And soil could contain decomposed material from once living things, uh, as well as small bits of rock and sediment which are non-living. So that's why we refer to soil as a combination of an abiotic and biotic factor. All right, that has living and non-living elements. Um, but this example here describes how that same factor can be used by different organisms. And we saw that in our very first slide, where the tree was using the soil to grow its roots and to obtain nutrients and water, whereas the fox and the wolf were using the soil to build burrows for shelter. So the same factor is being used, but for different reasons, depending on the animal or the organism. Okay? Let's move on to number 5. Now, this is a bunch of little tables or boxes here. Abiotic factors such as sunlight and temperature determine the organisms that can live in a particular environment. Uh, these abiotic factors also influence plant growth and how some animals regulate their body temperatures. I would argue that the most important abiotic factors uh, when it comes to determining what type of environment an area is going to be, sunlight, water, and to a good extent temperature are the 3 most important factors in determining what habitat or what environment a location is going to turn out to be. Uh, and when we get into discussing biomes, hopefully I can make that a little more clear. Um, well, when we get there, we get there. Okay, let's move on. Oh, I gotta click all the buttons. Oh wait, we have one more button to click. Animals rely on other animals of their own species to reproduce. 2 biotic factors interacting with each other. A giraffe cannot make babies with an elephant, so they rely on members of their own species in order to reproduce and raise offspring. Okay, let's go ahead and click on the abiotic factors in this desert habitat. So which of these are abiotic? We have a mountain, we have the sun, we have a camel, a cactus, and what appears to be sand. So you guys let me know what I should click on. Which of those are biotic? Remember, the biotic are the living things in an environment. Jetson, what is your double dog dare? I'll wait for you to type it. Okay, so this mountain here is not a living thing, so it would not be a biotic factor. Okay. This camel, however, is a living thing, so it is a biotic factor. We'll click on that. This cactus right here, despite not moving around the way a camel does, which you can obviously tell a camel is alive. Again, plants are also living things, though they may not be as active as animals. So yes, they would be a biotic factor. We'll click it here. The sunlight is not. It's not a biotic factor. It's abiotic. It's non-living. Okay, although without the sun, life as we know it on planet Earth would not exist. So it is very important. Uh, let's talk about the soil. The soil might be a biotic factor here. We might be able to click this because remember, soil is a combination of biotic and abiotic factors. We'll click it, but If it's wrong, then we'll just say that it can be a biotic factor. Ooh, in this case it was wrong. So apparently the sand in this environment does not contain any dead or decomposed remains, so it is non-living. So we're wrong here. And well, I guess we're left with just the camel and the cactus as our biotic factors. Okie dokie. Moving on. I'll pay attention. Four parts of a squirrel's habitat are circled. Select the abiotic parts. So we're looking for the abiotic, the non-living parts. So we have the squirrel itself. It looks pretty cute. Let me zoom in there. That's a cute looking squirrel. He's smiling too. And there's another one, his exact clone right there next to him. Okay, interesting. So we have the squirrel. We have what appears to be a little hole in the tree that it's standing on. There are some acorns on the ground and some water flowing in a stream nearby. Now, if I'm thinking about the first three, the squirrel, the hole in the tree, and the acorns, I would say that those are biotic factors. The acorns came from the tree. The tree is a living thing. The squirrel itself is a living thing. And the hole in the tree is just part of the tree, and the tree is a living thing. So these three things are probably not biotic factors. However, water itself is a key abiotic factor in environments. So I believe this is the only abiotic factor in this squirrel's habitat. And we will move on from there and see how we did. So we got it correct, all right? The only abiotic factor was the water in the stream, okay? All those other things were biotic factors. They were living things or parts of living things, okay? Let's move on. Okay, we have another set of tables to fill out. We need to classify these things down below as biotic factors or abiotic factors. So let's start off just in order. Temperature. Is temperature a living factor or a non-living factor? Living meaning biotic or abiotic meaning non-living. If you guys were saying to yourselves, oh, temperature, that's not a living thing, then you'd be correct. Temperature is an abiotic factor. It is a non-living factor. Okay? Next one, sunlight. Is sunlight a living factor or a non-living factor? Well, we just reviewed this in a previous slide. So it is a non-living factor. It is a abiotic factor. Rocks. Okay, rocks. Oops. Are rocks living or are they non-living? If you guys were thinking they are non-living, you would be correct. Boom. Okay, so the first three so far, we put them into the non-living factor section, and those look pretty good. Let's continue. Oxygen. Is oxygen a living factor or a non-living factor? Again, we just talked about this in a previous slide. Oxygen is, despite being definitely needed, actually all these things to a degree, except maybe rocks, are sorely needed by living things in the environment, but they themselves are not living. Oxygen is a gas. So we're going to put this right here under abiotic factors. Alrighty, moving on. Human. Is human a living factor or is it a non-living factor? And I think this one's pretty clear to us that a human is a biotic factor. It is indeed living. Moss. Moss. This is tricky. Living or non-living? Well, you might see some moss on a rock and think that, oh, that's part of the rock. Well, actually, the moss is growing on that rock or on that log. It's a tiny little plant with tiny root-like parts and tiny leaf-like parts. So it is a living thing. It is a plant. So we put it in the biotic factor section right here. Okay, a rotting log. Now, a log comes from a tree, and trees are living things. Now this rotting log is probably rotting because it's a dead tree, but the fact that it was once living means that it is a biotic factor. You don't need to be alive to be a biotic factor. And last but not least, worm. A worm, a small invertebrate that we can find in the soil. They are animals. We have definitely studied them. So we'd put them under biotic factors. They are living things. And they might be feeding on the rotting log in this particular example here. Okay. So again, we'll go over our biotic factors for this example. Humans, moss, rotting logs, and worms are all biotic factors. The main thing that sets the rotting log apart is that it is no longer alive, but it used to be alive. Okay, so we put it into biotic factors because it used to be alive. And then again, abiotic factors, all the non-living parts of the environment, temperature, sunlight, rocks, and oxygen are all really, really key and common abiotic factors in an environment. Okay, we got it all right. Perfect. Let's move on. Let's read this. Mr. Theron's science class is studying biotic and abiotic factors. The class took a field trip to the local pond where pairs of students collected water samples. Sean and Lori's sample contains water, frog eggs, and plant matter. Sean and Lori are each prepared to tell the teacher what biotic factors are in their pond sample. Select the student who is correct. I believe this is Sean here. Water is the only biotic factor in our pond sample. That was Sean's statement. Now Lori's statement is the plant matter and the frog eggs are both biotic factors in our pond sample. So one of these is incorrect and one of these is correct. Which one is correct? Okay, if you guys were thinking that plant matter and frog eggs are both biotic factors, uh, then and you selected Lori's statement, then you'd be correct. Sean's statement is unfortunately incorrect. Water is not a living factor. It's a non-living factor. Now, things might be alive inside the water, but the water itself is not living, nor was it ever living at all. Okay, we're going to keep moving on from here. Okay, we need to talk about types of interactions. So in the diagram where we looked at the giraffe and the lion and the elephant, what they described in those text boxes were some interactions. In the example of the lion, they described how lions might interact with other biotic factors, like the prey that they hunt, or they might fight with other lions. So in this case, we are going to be talking about interactions between two biotic factors, which would be a biotic to biotic interaction, a living thing to a living thing, or a biotic to abiotic interaction, which is a living thing interacting with a non-living thing. Okay? So, let's start off with number one. A rhinoceros eats grass. Now, a rhinoceros is an animal. It is obviously a biotic factor. And grass is a plant. It is also another living thing. So in this case, a rhinoceros eating grass is one biotic factor interacting with another. So we're going to go ahead and put this right here. A rhino eating grass is a biotic to biotic interaction. Okay. Next one, plants use sunlight for photosynthesis. So in this case, the plants, in our example, are using sunlight in order to carry out photosynthesis. It's the plants who are depending on it. Now, plants are living things, but sunlight is not. So when the plant is interacting with the sunlight, it is a living factor, a biotic factor, that is interacting with a non-living factor. In this case, the sunlight is non-living. Moving on. Water temperature regulates the body temperature of fish. And I use this piece of knowledge a lot. Oh my goodness. As a fisherman, water temperature is huge. Okay. So, just sorry for that sidebar. the water temperature, temperature itself is an abiotic factor, okay? Now, what is the temperature interacting with? In this case, it is interacting with the body temperature of a fish. So the fish's body temperature and the water temperature. In this case, uh, this would be a biotic to abiotic interaction. The fish is a living thing, and the water temperature is interacting with the fish's temperature. Alrighty? And last but not least, lions reproduce. Uh, a lion will need to find another lion in order to produce offspring. So in the case of the two lions reproducing to make offspring, this would be a biotic to biotic interaction. Okay? It could have been lions fighting. It could have been lions hunting a zebra. All of those involve two living things interacting. Okay? Let's move on. Hey, we got it all right. Perfect. All right, let's move on. Okay, check for understanding. This is the last check for understanding that we're going to do, and then I will assign the homework for tonight. Let's review these 3 points. So, remember, a biotic factor is any living or once living thing in an environment. I know I've been repeating it a lot, but that's because I want you guys to have it solidified in your memory. An abiotic factor is any non-living thing in an environment, okay? And last but not least, organisms interact with both biotic factors and abiotic factors in their habitats. Jetson. Okay, that's where we're going to end today. And let's go ahead and talk about the homework. So I'll go over here to our classroom page. Let's take a look. Well, I'll do it from here. Actually, it's probably easy. Oops. Sorry, guys. I'm just pulling up the PDF of our textbook. Okay. We are going to be. Oh shoot! Where are the questions? Uh-oh. Hmm. Ooh. It looks like those questions come later. All right. So, although we discussed, we had an introduction on ecology, we're going to be getting more in depth into things like adaptations and niches, which are basically um, traits that improve survival. That's what an adaptation is, or improves fitness. And we'll talk about niches, which is sort of like an organism's job in its environment. So that's what we'll be looking over in terms of homework tonight. So you guys will have to do some reading independently. And I would say we are going to read pages 326 to page 329 and answer 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? So those 5 questions. You'll be learning about things like parasitism, commensalism, mutualism. These are relationships between organisms. So biotic to biotic interactions. But you'll learn about really specific ones. Okay? You'll also have to go into adaptations, which are characteristics of organisms that help them survive. So, for example, if you're a frog, having webbed feet will allow you to swim better, and will allow you to effectively navigate in aquatic ecosystems. But frogs also have very powerful jumping legs, so they can also travel really easily on land too. So those are adaptations. You'll learn about niches, which are, again, the job that an organism performs in its environment. And then you'll learn about communities and populations, and you'll understand the difference between the two of them. So let me go ahead and post this. The assignment is, so let me double check that. Read 326 to 329. Okay. Okay, and this assignment will be due Wednesday. I'm assigning it right now. So the textbook pages are separate from the assignment, but you can find them right under. And this will be due on Wednesday, so please get that done. And remember, you can turn it in by scanning it. You can turn it in by attaching a Google Drive document, uh, or you can print it out and complete it, take a picture, and attach it again to your submission. Unfortunately, Jetson, you're in school, and homework is just a part of school to practice and get better at different topics. Okay? I'm sorry, Jetson, but I have homework too, and my homework is to, well, prepare lessons and grade and all that stuff. So I have my own homework to do. We're both doing homework. Okay. Let's go ahead and take attendance right now. And here's what I want everyone to do in their attendance check. I want them to I want you to share your favorite sport or your favorite game, okay? Your favorite sport or your favorite game. It could be a board game, a video game, a card game, or and also any sport. I want you to type your favorite sport or game under the attendance check post. So I'll put my favorite sport right here. And if you guys can comment on this post with your favorite sport, I will know you were listening to the stream. I will know you were here. And if and then I can mark you guys as being present. Crystal and Jetson, I know you guys are here. All right, I'm gonna leave this up. And once you guys do your attendance check, you can uh, uh, sign off of the stream. All right, I'm gonna leave this up here again. Please comment with your favorite sport or game, and I will know that you were here today. Alrighty, I'm gonna end the stream right now. You guys have a great rest of the day, and be ready for your second period. And I'll see you guys back on Wednesday. Alrighty, take care.
I feel your eyes in the morning sun. I feel you touch me in the pouring rain. And the moment that you wander far from me, I wanna feel you in my arms again. And you come to me on a summer breeze, keep me warm in your love, then you softly leave. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love? really do. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love, your love? How deep is your love? I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. When you come to me on a summer breeze, keep me warm in your love, then you softly leave. Well, it's me you need to show. How deep is your love, your love? How deep is your love? I really need to learn. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. They belong to you and me. Mom said, wait for the moment. Gone home, went to bed, while the other kids are still outside. I don't feel time when I sleep, so I snuggle up with my sheets and wait for a brighter day. I play football tomorrow with only my best friends, people I like but I don't love are not allowed. I wonder if Sharon will see me, but I play cool, 'cause cool is what you have to do. It's hard to make a point if you're living so loud. Turn it down. Trying to get my friends excited about not being invited. I say that's an opportunity. Whoa, but doubt I smile. Listen, doubt I smile. Yeah, it was so nice to get a call. Oh, Sharon, I'm good at stuff, and you're into stuff. Ooh, let's make products. Oh, I'm a product kind of guy, and you're a produce girl. I say money, 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 money will be spent. I'd like to the groove that turns you off, bassman. Ooh, break it down.
This wind is blowing my mind. I see the kids in the street without enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their needs? A summer's disregard, a broken bottle top, and a one-man store. They follow each other although when you know, 'cause they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Na 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 na. I've been a victim of a selfish kind of love. It's time that I realize that there are some with no home, not a nickel alone. Could it be really me pretending that they're not alone? A willow's deeply scarred, somebody's broken heart, and a washed out dream. They follow the pattern of the wind, you see, 'cause they got nowhere to be. That's why I'm starting with me. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. I'm starting with the man.
Ooh, what's that key?
I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. You gotta get it right while you got the time. 'Cause when you close your heart and you close your mind, that man in the mirror, and I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Oh yeah, yeah. Gotta learn to love. Give love, yeah. It's gonna feel real good.
The coffee is brewing.
It's gonna feel real good, yeah.
It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one of those who can easily hide. I don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live. If I was a sculptor, but then again, no. Or a man who makes potions in a traveling show. Oh, I know it's not mine, but it's the best I can do. My gift is my song, and this one's for you. And you can tell everybody that this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is. Now you're in the world. I sat on the roof and kicked all the moss. Well, a few of the verses, well, they got me quite cross. But the sun's been quite kind while I wrote this song. It's for people like you that keep it turned on. Well, excuse me for getting, but these things I do. You see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, yours are the sweetest eyes I've ever seen. And you can tell everybody that this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words
Oh, how wonderful life is while you're in the math class. See what I did there? Okay, let me quickly get my coffee going. I hope everyone had a good weekend. I heard that you guys had a hangout with Miss Bashner last week, where you guys got together and played some songs for each other, chatted, hung out. I was wondering how that was. I was supposed to go, but the hangout was full, so I did not end up getting to perform for the students who attended. That's unfortunate. Well, maybe I can make it this week. I don't know how many of you guys have actually heard me sing and actually perform or know that I used to have a small amateur band, and I used to go around and play shows when I was in college. So it's been a while, but I was planning on doing it, except the hangout was full. I was like, come on, Miss Bashner, can't you do this with more people? I'm just kidding. If you guys went and liked it, let me know. I definitely definitely like to check it out. Okay, here's my creamer. Alrighty. Coffee is almost done, guys. I'd just like to remind you guys, right now, Miss McGee. Ooh, I need a little more. Miss McGee is now officially active and working with my classes. That includes you guys. So if you receive emails from her, she'll probably just be sending you reminders to turn in work if you haven't submitted it. Miss McGee, if you're in the chat, I would recommend that we look at who has turned in Ratios Worksheet 1 on the Google Classroom. And for those of you who have not turned it in, you'll probably be hearing from either myself or Miss McGee shortly, so please get that done. That was the one that I assigned, I believe, on Friday. Okay, let's get back to it. Back at my chair, looking at the chat. Hi, Mr. Holt. Oh, it's Rachel. Hey, Rachel. Oh my goodness. Nathan and Ben and Jackie. All right, perfect. You're all here. All right. You know what? Since we're jumping into this class on a Monday, after we just got back from a relaxing weekend, hopefully, allegedly, let's go ahead and let's start this off with some fun stuff, okay? I'll show you guys a picture. It's not math related. It's me related. Just a way to keep you guys entertained. Let's see. There we go. Let me try to zoom it in, and then I'll display it right now on the screen. Display. Can anyone tell me what that thing is in my hands that I'm holding? Anyone at all? This is not math related. I just like to share this with you guys to make the morning more interesting. What is that thing? Huh. If you guys were thinking, oh, Mr. Holden, that's totally a frog, you were correct. I was in Mount Sarong in South Korea hiking around, and there was a river nearby, but I was on the walkway a little bit farther away from the river, and I saw this little dude jumping around on the ground. So I picked him up and held him, and it was a little frog, and there were dozens of little tiny frogs that were jumping around. I guess it was the season in which the frogs lay their eggs and hatch them. But yeah, lots of cute little frogs. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of that trip. It is not a bug, it is a tiny, tiny frog. Alright. Or perhaps it's a toad, I'm not sure. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Did I assign that? I don't think I did. Oh well. We'll review some stuff here today right now. Where is that one thing? I think this is it. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. Definitely not it. Okay, here we go. We're going to be talking today about... oh, shoot. Okay, I want to stay on this one. So, we are going to talk about ratio tables today. I believe you're on time, Thad. We're going to be talking about ratios today. And what I have here is a little PDF worksheet that I got from MobyMax, but we can definitely use it to our advantages. We're going to be, our homework is going to involve looking at ratio tables. Okay, so what is a ratio table, Mr. Holden? What the heck is that? Let me go ahead and get a Paint document open, and I can draw one out for you guys. Okay, so a ratio table is simply a list of equivalent ratios, okay? Equivalent ratios. So let's take this ratio right here in the example here. We'll start off with this base ratio of 1 to 2, okay? Let's do this a little bit. All right, so our ratio of 1 to 2. Oh, let me actually make this in the center. Here we go. And I'll expand this a little bit. So a ratio of 1 to 2 will have infinite equivalent ratios that will also equal the same 1 to 2 original ratio. And how do we come up with a table of equivalent ratios? Well, it's simple. We take this original ratio and we multiply the numbers on both sides by a different number. We multiply it by the same number, but essentially we can multiply this by different numbers, 2, 3, 4, 5, to get ratios that use different numbers but are equivalent. In the same way that a fraction will have equivalent fractions but with a different numerator and a different denominator. You do not have to copy this, but ooh, probably should copy this. And if not, you can go back later in the recording and check to see what you missed. All right, so how to create a table of equivalent ratios. Well, let's go ahead and start off by multiplying this ratio by another number. If we multiplied this 1 to 2 ratio by 1, it would end up being the same thing. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, so we get the same ratio. So we're going to multiply both of our sides of the ratio by 2. So 1 times 2 will give us 2. And 2 times 2 will give us 4. Okay, so this is the first equivalent ratio in our table. All right. And we could also do something similar. Let's go ahead and make another ratio. I'll draw another arrow down here. And we'll multiply this time by 3. Okay. We'll get a new ratio here. So remember, our 2 to 4 ratio was the result of multiplying our original 1 to 2 ratio by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. That brings us down here. I know the arrows aren't pointing directly at it. And 2 times 2 is 4. Well, let's go back to the original ratio and multiply 1 times 3. 1 times 3 will give us 3. And then we're going to take 2, again multiplied by 3. And 2 times 3 will give us 6. So now we have another equivalent ratio. Okay, we can erase all this other stuff here. Let's go ahead and do that. And just make it a little neater. Oop. Get out of here. Okay, so if we took these terms together and we organize it and make it a little prettier, we can make a table of equivalent ratios. So let's try to do this right now. I'll make a little box. How about that? We'll make a box. Not a really good box, but it is what it is. And then, yeah, okay. Almost done. Well, actually, there's a box right here. Wow. Mr. Holden is not smart sometimes, guys. All right, let's go ahead and reorganize into a table. So go back to our brushes, and here's our original ratio, 1 to 2. The next equivalent ratio is 2 to 4. And so on and so forth. We have 3 to 6. Now, we can extend this table and go on and on forever, right? We can just make up infinite equivalent ratios. But in your homework and in practicality, it's probably not something we're ever going to do. But at least we understand that for every single ratio, there will be equivalent ratios that we can determine simply by multiplying. Either we multiply the ratio by 2 to get the next one, and then we can multiply the ratio by 3. And we can even go further, multiply it by 4 and by 5 and by 6 and so on and so forth. And this table will grow and grow and grow as we do that. Okay? Now, this is how we determine the correct equivalent ratio table. All right? Sometimes people will make mistakes, or sometimes you'll get equivalent ratio tables that are not correct. All right? And let me show you an example of this right now. We'll go back to our lesson right here. And we start off with that same, this same ratio here, 1 to 2, okay? Now, it skips the next ratio that we made. We went from 1 to 2 to 2 to 4, all right? But the table here skips 2 to 4. That doesn't mean that the table's wrong. It just means that in this particular example, they decided not to multiply the original ratio by certain numbers, okay? So, well, let's check and make sure that this ratio is valid. So let's take a look at 1. What did we multiply 1 by? What do we multiply 1 by to get to 3? What do we times 1 by to get to 3? If you said 3, we multiplied 1 times 3 to get to 3, you would be correct. Okay? So, if we multiplied 1 by 3, from our original ratio, or sorry, if we multiplied the first number in our original ratio by 3, then we also have to multiply the second number, the second part of that original ratio by 3. And if we got to double check this and make sure this works, does 2 times 3 equal 6? It indeed does. So you would say that yes, this 3 to 6 ratio is an equivalent ratio for 1 to 2. Okay? And how did I do that? Well, I checked to make sure that both 3 and 6, sorry, I checked to make sure that 3 and 6 were multiples of our original ratio. Okay? So let's double check this again. All right, we're going to go to the next one. 5 to 10. Is this an accurate equivalent ratio for 1 to 2? Well, let's double check. In order to get from 1 to 5, I had to multiply 1 by 5. Okay? 1 times 5 will give me 5. Now, I just have to make sure that 2 times 5 is equal to 10. All right? Because remember, we have to the other number in our equivalent ratio will also be a multiple of 5. And in this case, we see this. Okay? 2 times 5 does give us 10. So this is an equivalent ratio. Let's go ahead and subtract. Get rid of all this stuff. Let's check the last one. Okay? Now, in order to get from 1 to 10, I had to multiply 1 by 10. Okay? 1 times 10 equals 10. This checks out. This side works. Let's check what 2 times 10 is equal to. 2 times 10 is equal to 20. So I should expect to see a 20 down next to our 10. Unfortunately, it is not a 20. It's 10 to 12, which well, it's its own ratio, and I'm sure it's a fine ratio wherever it's applied. But unfortunately, it is not an equivalent ratio. The only equivalent ratio will include a 10 and 20. Okay, so this does not check out. It means it's not an equivalent ratio. Alrighty. You guys understand how this works? I hope so. Let's go ahead and take a look at question 2. And you guys can write this down on a piece of paper if you're taking notes at the same time, and determine which of these ratios does not create an equivalent ratio. Okay? Which of them is not an equivalent ratio? So I'll label them here. We'll put 1 right here, 2, 3, and 4. So of these 4 ratios, which one is not equivalent to the others? Rachel says 4. Let's double check 4. Okay. So in order to get from 2 to 10, okay. In order to let me try to erase this actually. Sorry guys, I have to erase these numbers. In order to get from 2 to 10, I need to multiply 2 by what? I have to multiply it by 5. 2 times 5 will give me 10, right? 2 times 5, just making sure, equals 10. Alright, get rid of that. So, this matches up, which means if I multiply 5, it should equal 25 if this is equivalent. So let's check. 5 times 5 does equal 25. Alright, and that's what we get down here. So this checks out. Alrighty, this works. This means that 10 to 25 is an equivalent ratio to 2 to 5. So it's not 4. Oh no, Thad, 2 times 5 will give us 10. 2 times 5 will give us 10. 5 times 5 will give us 25. And you can see here that it matches up. 2 times 5 gives us 10, which is down here. 5 times 5 gives us 25, which we also have down here. You said that number 2 is the incorrect ratio. Well, let's take a look at number 2. Okay, I'll erase all this. Let's take a look. So, in order to go from 2 to 3, well, I don't know any even number or whole number that I can multiply 2 by to get to 3. But you know what? Let's just go and look at the other number instead. And we'll come back to the first number in our ratio later. Let's look at 5 to 10. So in order to get from 5 to 10, what did I have to multiply 5 by? I'm not multiplying 5 times 10. I need to know what I multiply 5 by to get to 10. If you said 5 times 2 equals 10, you'd be correct. So 5 times 2 will give us the equivalent half of this ratio, which is 10. Now, that means if we multiply 2 also by 2, then that should give us whatever number is here. What is 2 times 2? 2 times 2 is equal to 4, which is not what we have down here. We have a 3. So this second ratio is not equivalent, okay? This is the ratio. 3 to 10 is the non-equivalent ratio in our example, right? And that's pretty much how you do it. Not too tricky, not too tricky. Well, maybe it's a little tedious, but most things in math are. But who here is understanding this, or who would like me to do some more practice problems to show you guys some examples? Let me know in the chat. All right, there's no questions. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's take a look at this ratio table and let's identify which of these numbers is not equivalent to the others. Our original ratio is 1 to 3. So every single ratio after it has to be equivalent. Let's check this. Well, Sadina, you're correct in that you have to multiply your original ratio by different numbers in order to see if they will equal what is in the table. All right? And we'll always start off with one part of the ratio. So I like to start off with just looking at one number first and seeing what I have to multiply it by to get to the next entry in the table. So if I'm looking here, I have to multiply 1 by 3 in order to get to 3. Okay? And I'm always going to be multiplying to get to these equivalent ratios. I'm not going to be adding, I'm not going to be subtracting or dividing, I'm multiplying. Multiplying by whatever number gets me to that next value on the table. In this case, the only number that I can multiply 1 by to get 3 is 3. Okay? And that means I also have to multiply my second part of the ratio by 3. Okay? And if this matches up, meaning that if I multiply 3 by 3 and I get 9, that means that this ratio is equivalent. And if we can see here, 3 times 3 does indeed equal 9. So the second ratio checks out. The second ratio is okay. This is an equivalent fraction. All right? Let's go ahead and erase the work we did. And let's look at the next one. So let's take a look at change the color. I'm going to take a look at this ratio right now. This one right here, 4 to 10. Is this going to be equal to our original ratio of 1 to 3? Well, let's take a look. 1 times 4 will give me 4. So in order to go from 1 to 4, I multiply 1 by 4. And that works. But that also means I have to multiply my 3 by 4 as well and see if that equals 10. Unfortunately, 3 times 4 will give us 12, okay? Which is not the same as the number they give us in the table here. So, this is not an equivalent ratio. 4 to 10 is not an equivalent ratio. And the reason why is because the 10 does not match up when we multiply 3 uh, by 4. We do get 4 if we multiply 1 times 4, but if we multiply 3 times 4, we get 12, which is not the number they give us here for this ratio. Okay? So this is the inequivalent ratio, specifically because the 10 is not correct. All right. So those are our 3 practice problems. Well, in that particular style, let's take a look at a different problem. So in this example, we're going to be entering the missing numbers to create equivalent ratios. Let me scroll over here. So we got to find the missing numbers for our ratios, all right? And this should be pretty straightforward. It's essentially the same thing we're doing, except now instead of finding the one that's not supposed to be in the table, we're just completing the table itself. So let's go ahead and take a look here. 1 to 2 is equivalent to 2 to 4, which is equivalent to 3 and blank. We don't know what our equivalent ratio is here, but we can easily find it. Let's just see what happens or how we got from 1 to 3. In order to go from 1 to 3, we had to multiply 1 by 3, right? Which means that we're going to be, in order to find this value, we need to take 2 and multiply it by 3 as well, okay? 2 times 3 will give us 6, which means that the blank entry right here next to 3 should be 6. Okay? Let's take a look at the next one. I'll erase the other side. So, and this time I'm given the second number for my ratio first, not the first one. So I have to examine the second one first. In order to get from 2 to 8, I had to multiply 2 by 4. Okay? And if in case you're wondering, Mr. Holden, how can I, if I don't know off the top of my head, how can I do this? Well, what you can also do is you can take the larger number from the ratio and divide it by the smaller number. Okay? So in this case, let's go ahead and draw this out. So I'm taking 8, circled it in blue, so I'm going to write it in blue. And I'm going to divide it by 2. I'll go back to black here. I'll divide by 2, and this will give me the number that I have to multiply my original ratio by. Okay, so 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. I know now that 4 is what I multiplied 2 by in order to get to 8. Okay, so in case you're having trouble figuring out what you multiplied by, you can just divide the larger number by the smaller number in the ratio. All right, so 2 times 4 will give me 8, and this works out, right? Which means I also have to multiply, let me change color. Which means I also have to multiply by 4 on my other number. So 1 times 4 will give me 4. And I'll write that in here. And here we go. I've completed my equivalent ratio table. You guys seeing how this works? Hopefully. Let me know any questions you have. And if you guys are wondering, this is similar to how we would do equivalent fractions. I mean, remember, we can write ratios the same way we can write fractions. If I go back up here, let me just erase all this stuff. Okay. This is sort of a callback to our lesson on equivalent fractions, or determining equivalent fractions. You could also write them out as fractions. 1 to 2, which is equal to 2 to 4, which is equal to 3 to 6, which is equal to 4 to 8. These are both ratios and fractions. They are all equal to each other. Okay? If you remember from our math antics video last week, we learned that ratios and fractions are pretty much identical except for what they represent. Okay? Not really any questions. You're right, Thad. So let's go ahead and move on from this. And let's do this next question right here together. Question number 5. Okay? So right now I want you guys to tell me in the chat what number am I missing for this second ratio? What number am I missing here? Okay? Let's do this one first, and I'll wait for some responses, and then we'll ask the next one. Yes. Yes, it is 10. So, in case you're wondering how we got that answer, first we need to examine how we got from 1 to 2. And in order to get from 1 to 2, we had to multiply 1 times 2. Alright? Which means we're also going to be multiplying 5 times 2. And 5 times 2 will give us 10. And so the first entry will be 2 to 10. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. Let me erase these other ones here. So our third entry, we are given the second number, okay? So we have to figure out what we multiplied 5 by to get to 25. And if you figured out that 5 times 5 is equal to 25, then you would be correct. Now we got to multiply 1 times 5. So I'll do 5 times that 1 over there. That will give us 1 times 5, 5 times 1. Will give us 5 here. All right? And for this last entry, let's take a look. We're given the first number of the ratio. We had to figure out what we multiplied 1 by to get to 10. And if you figured out that you had to multiply 1 times 10, then you're correct. Which means that we also have to multiply 5 times 10 to get this the second number in the ratio. So 5 times 10 gives us 50. All right, and we've completed our table. And that should be it. Yeah, you can multiply both sides. And we could even go further. We can multiply one. Let's do another entry. So let's multiply 1 times 100. 1 times 100 will give us 100. And 5 times 100 will give us 500. So we could have another entry down here, and we'll have 100 to 500, and that is an equivalent ratio to our original 1 to 5 ratio. So you could make this list infinite numbers long, or you have infinite entries on this list. It really depends what you want to multiply your original ratio by. Okay? So, does anyone have any questions? If no one has any questions, we'll go straight to attendance check, and I'll assign the work, and we can get started on it. We can end class a little bit early. What do you guys think? You let me know if you want me to review some more. Absolutely no questions. Okay, so I'm going to be posting. Let me see. Which one am I going to do? Oh, you know what? I have to pull it up from this site over here. Give me a second, guys. Uh, where is it? Where is it? I can't find it. Uh-oh. I guess we can do this. Yeah, I think this is fine. Alrighty. Let me go ahead and get this saved. Ooh, give me a second. Almost there. Creating equivalent ratios. Perfect. All right, let me show you guys. Let me upload it first, and I'll show you guys what it looks like after. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to be posting it right here. It's an assignment. This is called Creating Equivalent Ratios. And this is going to be due by Wednesday. And actually, we'll do numbers 1 through 10 here. We'll do numbers 1 through 10. So only the first 10. There's 20 questions on this sheet. But I don't want to make you guys do too much. So let's add the actual file. And here it is. Upload and assign. So just the first 10, that's what we're doing. And let me go ahead and show you guys what it looks like once I find it. Okay, so here is the assignment. And instead of having tables, we are just given some ratios on in an equation. All right, so we'll have to determine these a different way without using the table. But I'll show you guys how to do that right now. In some ways, it's a little simpler. Okay. Now, if we do not know a number in an equation, what we're going to do is simply put an x here. 5 to x is equal to 1 to 2. All right, 5 to x is equal to 1 to 2. Now there's a couple different ways you can solve this, right? You know that the first numbers are supposed to line up and the second numbers are supposed to line up. So let me draw that. This x is supposed to be equivalent to the 2. And the 1 is supposed to be equivalent to the 5, all right? So the first numbers will line up, and the second numbers will also line up. They're supposed to be equivalent to each other, right? So what can we do now? Well, we can actually make our own little table here. Let's try making our own little table to solve these problems. It might be a little easier if we do it this way. So we'll put 1 to 2. And then we'll put 5 to, we'll just put x. We don't know. All right. Now, it's a simple matter of figuring out what you multiplied one of the ratios by to get to the equivalent ratio. So this would be, we multiplied 1 by 5 to get to 5. Okay. And then we multiplied 2 by the same thing to get to whatever x is. We got to multiply 2 by 5. And 2 times 5 should be equal to 10. Okay? So our blank number here should be 10. Okay? Uh, uh, Unfortunately, I cannot do it not as anything other than a PDF file. Okay? So what you'll have to do, Sedina, is you'll have to write out the problems on a piece of paper and solve them like that. And that way I can see your work. I'd rather you do it that way, actually. I don't want you to edit into Google Drive because I won't be able to see your work. Just putting the answers is not enough in order to get passing marks in math. I need to see that you know the steps to solve a problem. Okay? So in this case, we figured out that the blank spot in our ratio should be 10. 5 to 10, it's an equivalent ratio to 1 to 2. And that's the first one right there. So we're only going to be doing 1 through 10 here. So don't do the whole worksheet. We'll save some for practice tomorrow. Okay? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on one second. We're going to change this a little bit. I'm seeing some wonky stuff happening here. Okay? We're not going to do 2. All right? We're not going to do, I think we could do this. We can do 7 times 1, yeah. Not 9. Not 10. Okay. We're going to do 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, and 12. Wait, is that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more. And we'll do 14. So we'll do, yeah. Let me see if I can save this so it looks like this. Yeah, so we'll do only the circled ones. I'll circle them here. And then I'll re-upload it with the correct problems. Okay. Let me save this. Where do I save? There we go. I'll close this and reopen. Close all. Close. Leave. Alright. Let me reopen and make sure that it's right. Yep. Okay, so now it shows up with my notes added in. So the ones I canceled off we're not doing. We're doing the ones I circled. Alright? Okay. Let me edit this. Where do I edit? Edit. I'm going to get rid of that. Reattach the up-edited file. And there we go. Upload. Let's double check. Make sure it's right. Yep. Okay, so it has the changes made to it. So you guys will be able to see which ones you have to do. So instead of 1 to 10, or, well, we'll change this to just be 10 questions. And you'll do the ones that are circled. Alrighty. Anything else I can help you guys out with? If not, we're going to move on to attendance check. So I'll start the attendance check while you guys are figuring out whether you need to ask a question or not. So, attendance check. I want everyone to put their favorite fruit. Alright, your favorite fruit. I want you to respond to this attendance check. I need you to comment below it and type in your favorite fruit. So I'll put mine right here. I like apples, so I'm going to write apples. That's my favorite fruit. And you guys need to respond to this with your favorite fruit so that I know that you were here until the end of our lesson. And you can be marked as participating. You want to do number 3? Number 3 on the worksheet? Ben? Alright, we'll take a look. Number 3? Alright, well, let's take a look. Put down here. I'll do this in black as well. So, let's make a new table. We'll do 5 to x. We don't know what that is, right? And it'll be equivalent to 10 to 8, right? This is going to be tricky. So what do we do in this situation? Well, in order to get from 5 to 10, I had to multiply my original ratio by 2. Okay? Unfortunately, I do not know my original number in this situation. I don't know what x is, but I know that I have to multiply it by 2. Okay? 2 times x will give me our... Well, actually, let's not use an x. Let's use a question mark here. I know I have to multiply whatever that is by 2 to get to 8. Right? Now, what can I do to go backwards? What if I wanted to go reverse? Instead of going from question mark times 2 equals 8, how do I go from 8 back to my question mark? Do I multiply to go back from 8 to the question mark? What I'm basically trying to say is that when I go from my unknown number to 8, I have to multiply it by 2. But to go back, I have to do the reverse, which means instead of multiplying by 2, I'm going to go back dividing by 2. So what's 8 divided by 2? Well, 8 divided by 2 should equal 4. Okay? And if I insert 4 into my first ratio, we can just double check to make sure it works out. Okay? 5 times 2 equals 10. 4 times 2 equals 8. So this ratio checks out. Alrighty? So Sina, you did a great job. Way to go getting the answer correct. Excellent job. Alrighty. So if that is it, I'm going to close this stream. And I will see you all on Wednesday. Please do your homework. Alright, let me just mark the attendance right now. How many ratio worksheets are we doing today? Just the one. Just the one. Nothing more than that. We'll go back to Moe Max on Wednesday as normal. We'll have a hangout on Wednesday so that we can all start talking to each other. Alrighty, guys. I'm going to close my stream right now. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will check your attendance once you guys are done with that. So, everybody, have a great afternoon. See you on Wednesday.
Check it. Check it. Oh, I think I got the fever. I'm heated. Pumping up the meter. Roll me a ringleader, bad party bleeder. Make this with a storm. Lead after lead after leader. Hey, can you dig it? I come alive, y'all give me what you got. Back up, pump, stick up, pump your fist up. You took the shadow, don't buck shots, a bus, slip up. 시작한 건 나인데 신경 쓰이잖아요. 희미해져가는 게 사라져 없어져 버린다는 게 망설임은 항상 내 편 물어볼 수조차 없죠. 대체 어디로들